Will the House come to order? Mr. Clerk?
Aloha and good afternoon. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Darius K. Keela. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
Please stay seated unless you're the representative from Manoa. All right, hold on. Good afternoon and happy Aloha Friday, colleagues. What an absolute privilege I get to go on the Friday before Super Bowl. I'd first like to declare that I hope Taylor Swift wins this weekend and the Kansas City Chiefs. I often probably contemplate things and then maybe run with it once I know the feeling. And I maybe had an idea this morning what I wanted to talk about, and then the earthquake happened. And in that split 10 seconds, there was uncertainty and whatnot, and it made me reflect on kind of the uncertainty of just every day. But I get to think about here with you folks, and as a lawmaker, public servant, elected official, there's nowhere that I don't go and I get to describe that this is the privilege of a lifetime. Although my lifetime may be a lot shorter than many of you folks, I am truly grateful to be here with you all. But prior to here, I also think about the time spent in many other roles and positions. Prior to this, you folks know I worked for my predecessor. Prior to that, I worked at the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. Prior to that, I served as a neighborhood board member. Prior to that was time spent in Oregon as a server for Cracker Barrel, Northwest Pizza, Ram Restaurant and Brewery, a dorm assistant, resident advisor, and even as a Raider ambassador for my college. Several of those jobs overlapped at many different times, but at that time, I thought, wow, what a privilege to do this. You truly learn a new skill set working with people, whether it's in the restaurant industry or working with each other here at the legislature. A skill set I did not anticipate was picking up what happens after we get elected and the work we do here. I never knew that my work here would lead me to behind the seat of a school bus. As you folks know, this summer the DOE cut bus services throughout the state, impacting my community, and somehow I got called to go behind the school bus. In this lifetime, I think of that as one of the biggest privileges I've had yet. I think our school bus drivers are sometimes the unsung heroes that have to work with their children that are either running late to school, yelling on their way to school, having crises on their way to school. And they're also the ones that we entrust to get them home safely after a long day at school, a school day spent with emotions. I'd like to thank the school bus drivers throughout the state that make sure our kids get to school safely and they make sure they come home safely. But in that school bus route, and in this lifetime, we never know the route or journey that we will embark on. But in all of this, I am reminded to understand the unpredictability of life itself. Our time here and our journeys here were all different, but somehow 51 of us all convey here on the floor every single day for the Hawaii State Legislative Session. So let us operate as stewards of time, recognizing the preciousness of each moment and the responsibility that comes with it. For in the honor and legacy of those who come before us, may we pave the way for the ones to follow. Mahalo.
Thank you, Representative Keela. Item 1, roll call. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayu, Mr. Alcos, Ms. Amato, Ms. Bellotti, Mr. Chun, Ms. Cochran, Mr. Evslin, Mr. Ganadin, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Gates, Mr. Hashem, Mr. Holt, Ms. Hussey Burdick, Ms. Ichiyama, Ms. Kahaloa, Ms. Capella, Mr. Keela, Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Ms. Lachika, Ms. Lamosao, Ms. Lowen, Ms. Martin, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. Miyake, Ms. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima,
Excuse.
Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Pirik, Ms. Poe, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Saiki, Mr. Sayama, Ms. Souza, Mr. Takayama, Ms. Takenouchi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd, Mr. Ward, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, 50 members are present, 1 is excused.
Thank you. Item 2, reading of the journal. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, may this matter be deferred.
So ordered. Item 3, Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the governor?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Item 4, Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Members, are there any introductions? Representative Quinlan.
Members in the gallery today, we have a prominent Democratic activist, Mr. Bart Dame. And Bart, your cell phone flashlight is on. Welcome, dear House of Representatives.
Members, any other introductions? With no further introductions, let's move on to the order of the day. Item 5, reports of standing committees. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Standing Committee Report number 217-24 as listed on page 1, and the accompanying House bill pass second reading and be placed on the calendar for third reading.
I believe that is 218. And Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussions on Standcom Report 218-24? Representative Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be voting no on this measure. This seems like a typical housekeeping measure as far as funding goes, but I take issue with a certain aspect of this bill as to how the funds specifically relative to Section 3 pertaining to the House of Representatives are utilized, especially as a matter of equity so that House members, including myself, can use the resources that the funding will cover. In Section 3, it states that an appropriation out of the general revenues of the state of Hawaii in the sum of over $16 million will be made to the House of Representatives. If any part of this over $16 million appropriation is funding partisan research offices and partisan legal services within the House, which is my understanding of how this appropriation will be allocated upon further research and conferring with the drafting agency for this particular bill, then I cannot support this bill. As a Republican member, it appears that I am not able to utilize the resources of the House Minority Research Office, which is a real issue when funding is being allocated to the House to help House members. Therefore, having any part of this appropriation funding partisan offices, from my perspective, is not being used to its highest and best value if we are picking and choosing who can utilize the resources this bill is meant to cover. I cannot support funding that leads to inequity in this matter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Pirik,
In opposition,
proceed.
this bill appropriates funds for the Auditor, Legislative Reference Bureau, Ombudsman, and the Ethics Commissions. These are notable things that should be funded. However, this also supplies our salary, and this would give each of us this year $72,000 a year. When we look at how many potholes we have, the way that our kids are being raised in the Department of Education, when we look at taxation, when we look at the level of homelessness and the expensive housing on the market, I think we're doing a bad job and we shouldn't be rewarded with salaries, so I don't support our salary.
Representative Quinn.
In support, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to point out that we are all free to donate our salaries to charity.
Representative Nakamura.
Just a point of clarification that salaries are included, not in this bill, but through the Budget and Finance.
Thank you. All right, members, with no further discussions, the chair calls a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Standing Committee Reports numbers 219-24 through 227-24 as listed on pages 2 through 4, and that the accompanying House bills as amended pass second reading and be referred to their designated committees.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussions on SCR 219-24? Representative Pierick.
In opposition?
Proceed.
This bill makes emergency appropriations for collective bargaining costs items for the members of bargaining units, etc. So in other words, if the governor declares a national emergency, a state emergency proclamation, then certain state employees can get paid more. We're in a state where the governor seems to continually proclaim emergencies, and the previous governor did the same thing. So if we're going to be in a emergency proclamation state, this would then raise the salaries of a lot of state employees, and I don't think that's fair to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Members, we're going to move on to SCR. Representative Garcia.
Reservations.
So ordered. All right, moving on to SCR 220-24. SCR 221-24. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Speaker. Contrary to expectations, I don't always stand up and speak against the bill because this is a great bill. Which
In opposition.
No.
Oh, in support?
See, I was trying to get away from this self-fulfilling prophecy. I stand up for good bills. This is a good bill because
Ward and in support. Proceed.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. But it's where there's been molasses in a type of H-herd lockjaw of getting employees hired, and we've got 20 to 25% of our state government vacant. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill in the right direction. It starts to flow. But I would say we could even go further. I think we should be on Indeed, even Craigslist. We should have a net that goes far and wide to make sure we fill these positions, because sometimes departments say, well, you gave us the money, but we couldn't fill the position. DHERD has got to do a better job. This bill helps do it, and I thank the authors for that. But we've got to do better to get our employment. And I know everybody's got a shortage of workers, but we've got to do better if we are going to get the job done for the people of Hawaii. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, it's a surprise to you. I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members, let's move on to SCR 222-24. Next page. SCR 223-24. SCR 224-24. SCR 225-24. SCR 226-24. Next page. SCR 227-24. Members, we will be taking a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Item 6, introductions of resolutions. Mr. Clerk, are there any resolutions for action?
Mr. Speaker, there are no resolutions for action. May all others be referred to print.
So ordered. Item 7, members, are there any announcements? No announcements. Let's move on to adjourn. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon Monday.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon Monday.